Well, first of all, what can you remember about the shops in Fore Street?
Right from the Earl Grey to Orwell Place, or what did you
Yes,
want?
something like that. Down round where you lived and who you knew.
Well, for a start, we had the switch, we had the steam packet public house at the top of Duke Street. That was on the corner of Duke Street and Fore Street. Next to that there was a sweet shop. Half of it was sweet shop, half of it was greengrocery, and you went down a steep step into a low timbered shop. Next to that was a butcher's, built on the same lines, with all sort of had sagging roofs and timbers and overhangs. There were about 4 shops like that. The next shop would be shoemaker, and he made shoes and he repaired them. We went further along, or almost next door, there was a yard with big iron barred gates. That was Mew's Brewery, spelt M-E-U-X. Well, that was a tall concrete building, and it was supposed to have brewed good beer. It was in light brown bottles with an elliptical label and a red star on it. That was the sign. Next to that were offices. They were the offices of the brewery. Next to that was a big timbered gateway. The gate wasn't there, but the doorposts, gate posts, and the lintel over the top were there. And the posts were square, about a foot square, of oak. They were about 12 or more feet high. Over the top of that was a wooden arch. That was about a foot square. I take it that was oak as well. Inside there were Parker's cottages. There were either 3 or 4, I can't remember which. That was on the left of the entrance inside. That had a wicket gate which led to the docks. To entering that gate on the right was a big open cobbled yard with 2 or 3 stables, I can't remember the number, 2 or 3 stables around. Well, that went behind 3 shops, but a little further on it went behind the Neptune public house, which was somewhere about 1650 dated. That was a courtyard for receiving the stage coaches, and the stables for stabling the horses, and a pump from which they got their water. Well, coming out of that yard into Fore Street again, the first shop...
Half a minute. When you come out of that yard, you went past the Neptune itself?
No.
Oh.
When you came out of that gateway, you came to a greengrocer shop again, and a small grocery shop. That's 2. Next to that was Hagger, the pork butcher. You went up 2 steps to that. Next to that was the Neptune Inn. So altogether, with those shops and the overall frontage of the Neptune Inn, possibly a bit beyond at the back, was in excess of about 40 feet. Well, after you got past Neptune...
Just a minute, Ted. Was the Neptune a pub when you were a boy?
Yes, it was no different from what it was when it was in use, other than the fact you didn't get the stagecoaches there.
I get you.
But people put up there, and of course they had their cars, which didn't take up a lot of room. Well, that was a public house, pure and simple, but it did take visitors. Next to that was a large double-fronted shop, a very smart wine shop, where they sold rum, ruby port and things like that.
Oh, yes.
Next to that was another gateway, which still got big, square, wooden doorposts, and that had a beam across the top. I would say that that doorway was about 15 feet, maybe more higher, up to about 16 feet. That led into a large yard, cobbled yard as well, where there was a man who dealt with horse food, bales of straw, bales of hay, and things like that. He also had a little chicken food. Well, next to that was a row of offices. That was an old-fashioned building with timbers outside, overhanging upper floor, diamond windows, and in the middle of this office block, which should be, I should say, 30 feet long, that had a real oak door gatepost and a square lintel over the top, which was horizontal and not curved. That had two heavy nailed door with big square-headed nails driven in. They were not ornaments, they held the door together. I would say that door was somewhere in the region of 10 or 11 foot high. That was a double door.
Yes.
That led into a courtyard. That courtyard in the courtyard on the right was the entrance to an office. Don't know whatever was stored in there. I never went in that place. But the other side of that office were either 3, if not 4 cottages. They had no gardens, only a narrow strip of soil about 2 feet wide, where the occupants planted brightly coloured flowers, and they had brightly coloured flowers climbing up the wall. This courtyard also was cobbled, and at the bottom of it was, I suppose it would be a mill, where they processed barley and malt and dried hops. Well, entering the gateway on the right was another door which faced the opposite door. But that one, you went up 2 steps to it, and that was an office. It had a rough wooden floor with a moth-eaten piece of carpet on it. It was a coloured thing. And it had a tall wooden desk. I would say the desk was about 5 foot, nearly about 4'6" high. And 2 clerks sat there, and they faced a diamond mullioned window onto the Fore Street. They sat on high stools with backs on, something like Charles Dickens' day. Well, that property was owned by a couple of elderly men. They were once young, because they'd been there years, known as Mr Sizer and Mr Lord. I never did meet Mr Lord, but I met Mr Sizer many times. He was a tall man with a dark suit, pipe-fitting, tight pipe-leg trousers, and he wore a long black coat with a waistcoat almost up to his Adam's apple, and he wore a deep white starched collar that looked uncomfortable, and most probably it was. He's a white-haired man with a white beard.
More or less dressed in Victorian time.
He was, and of course he had an office somewhere which was through the other office. But he was Mr Sizer. And he also, I remember, come to mind, he had a coal yard in the property at the back of the office. He supplied coal, and of course he had stables. He had a stable, he supplied coal, he supplied bushels of malt, and pounds of hops and yeast that the country people used to come for. I've been there myself, and bought the malt and the hops and the yeast to make their beer.
Oh, yes.
Well, then he also delivered coal.
Oh, yes.
Now, if I remember rightly, there were 2 men lived in those cottages. Who the others were, I can't remember. 2 men lived in those cottages. One was a man who looked after the malt and things like that and did the odd jobs. And the other one went out. No, that's right. I'm right. There must have been 3 men there, because 2 of the men went out on the cart.
Oh, yes.
They always went out loaded with coal. They used to pass the house where I lived, well, when I was not at school, every day of the week, including Saturdays. Well, we came out of there, And the next shop was Mr Potton, the greengrocer.